Welcome to Communication, Connection, Community, the Podcaster's Podcast. This podcast takes a deep dive into modern-day communication strategies in the podcasting space. We chat with interesting people who make the podcasting and speaking spaces exciting and vibrant. We also dive into the podcasting community with news, updates, latest trends and topics from this ever-evolving space. So strap in. It's going to be one amazing ride. Let's dive into today's episode. For over 25 years, Shane Spraggs has been driving successful projects for a variety of notable media and software startups and some of the world's largest brands, including Disney. As CEO of Vertura, Shane's focus on productivity has generated immense value for our Fortune 100 clients, and he plays a vital role in developing and implementing cutting-edge systems and strategies that consistently boost the performance of their remote-based teams. The reason why I want to talk about remote work today is because not only is Shane an expert in it, but you know what? There are so many people in the podcasting space. They're working remotely already. We're coming out of a pandemic that, remote work becomes very relevant in our world today. Shane, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
It is a thrill, my friend, to have you here today. Let's talk about remote work. This isn't a new concept. This is something that's been around for generations. We just maybe didn't think about it as remote work, but how long has this been a thing for that matter?
Well, actually, back in the 70s, IBM actually had a program for telecommuting, looking at ways to reduce the commute for their team members in California. And they were doing it for many years. And it was actually picking up a lot of steam for a while. I don't get into the nitty gritty, but around 2000, CEO of Yahoo came in and she decried that everybody has to be back in the office. We can't have anyone working from home because we need to be together to be productive and to be creative. And that put a bit of a kibosh on the concept of remote work for a period of time, which was only really brought back by the pandemic. Up until then, we had smatterings of people working remote, very few remote only companies. A lot of, anyone who was working remote, they were one-off in a business or they were, a satellite office. Then, of course, the pandemic really pushed it all the way home. And what people learned during the pandemic is that it's less about productivity, more about well-being. People learned that, hey, I didn't have to spend an hour and a half driving today to get to my job. We call the job a 9 to 5, but it's really, 8 to 7, a lot of people. I'm not spending on average $55 a day to be at the office. I get to be there when my kids come home from school. I get to be able to work with focus on the things I'm working on. I feel more productive and so on and so forth. And that went well for a couple of years. And around the start of 2023, there was a bit of a push back to the office. And that return to the office happened for a lot of large companies. And I feel for good reason as well. From my perspective, to work as a remote company, it requires new management techniques and new leadership approaches. And the HR department really needs to know how to run a remote business. And a lot of the companies just didn't learn that over the course of the pandemic. And it was going to be easier for them to bring people back to the office than it would have been to retrain their entire staff. Now, that being said, around October, September last year, that flipped. People started realizing that maybe return to the office is not as what it was going to be. Instead of people going full-time remote, we saw a lot of companies meeting middle of the way, hybrid work, working 2 to 3 days a week at home.
What's interesting is there are companies who do nothing but hire workers remotely. I have a client in Germany, for example, and most of the individuals who work for that company, they're not in Germany. They're in US, they're in Australia, they're in the UK, they're in various parts of the world completely. So it can work.
Yeah.
It's a matter of, as you said, it's training, it's understanding that people have better quality of life when they aren't spending, as you said, 3 hours travel time. And that's if traffic's good. And even though, when I worked in radio, my commute was 30 minutes.
Yeah.
But if ever there was an accident, that 30 minutes could easily be 3 hours.
Yeah.
One way or the other.
Or weather. There's lots of reasons why that could make your life miserable. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. What is it about companies then who are resistant to embracing remote work more? You said it's training, or that's one aspect. Is it the thought that maybe they're not getting the productivity out of their employees?
I think the productivity argument has been quashed by companies that are fully remote and demonstrating that they're able to be productive. One that comes to mind recently, it was the company that built Monopoly Go. It's an online app, very successful game, and it was built by a remote only business. There's another company that I'm familiar with out of Vancouver that called the Jane app, which they're fully remote as well, and they have people all over North America working for them. And these organizations may not have started remote, but they've adopted some of the remote best practices. And along with that is training the managers on how to work with remote teams is really the key bit to it. It's an obvious reason that this is not really picked up. And the reason is simple. We had bad managers before the pandemic, right? We have this culture of taking someone who's a really good individual contributor and saying, hey, you're good at your job. Let's see if you can manage. And oftentimes they can't because management's a different skill. It requires different muscles and a lot of different training. And so now we make things worse. We are now taking these people who don't know how to manage people and telling them they can't see their team or walk up to their desks or gather in a room together. And it just adds to the challenge of someone becoming a good manager. It's not just a matter of trust. Trust comes from the best practices they follow. So they do a better job of delegating the work, assigning responsibility and accountability, getting their team members to say when they'll get things done, following up with them to see if they got it done. And if they don't, dealing with that appropriately and creating a psychologically safe environment for people to be productive and creative and innovative. So all that from that trust is built because they deliver value to the company as opposed to clocking hours.
Wow. I run a company that is totally remote. All of my team are, and again, I'm a very small company. I'm not a large corporation that relies on brick and mortar and such, and my company is virtual. Podcasting is a very virtual thing. Who knew? So maybe that's a difference too, is I have a virtual company. My business, I don't need to go to a physical location. Even the way we work today with all of the tools and technology, you don't need to be in a physical studio to record. We have microphones, we have all of those things that could connect to a computer that we didn't have to the same way that we do today, say even 5 years ago or 10 years ago. So for us to do the work, for myself and my teammates, we don't need to be sitting in a room together. We can easily be sitting on a Zoom call. That also didn't exist. Well, it existed, but it was very rudimentary. I think before we had Zoom, we had Skype, right? And that was a thing. Remember Skype?
Yeah.
Well, Skype is still there, but it's now part of a larger.
It's now Teams.
The Teams, right?
Yeah,
right. But the point is that you still had more physical meetings and physical connections. Now that we're in this virtual space, and I think the pandemic proved this, we can be equally productive. We can be even more productive. We can, in some cases, and I speak frankly as a business owner, I can grow a global company and do it with remote teammates and probably more effectively, more expeditiously versus the old way of doing it, which was clocking in a time, going to an office, doing it like this. Am I the only person? I know I'm not the only person.
You're not, no. And that's where business is going. It makes no sense to me that if I'm going to start a new business, I'm going to spend $5,000 to $6,000 a month on a office space and limit myself to the people in my geographic location when there's people all over the world who can do the work I want at various rates. And if you think about where businesses are going to go from here, the next Google and Microsoft are being created quite literally in someone's garage right now, not in the same way Apple was built in a garage, but more of a, this is the office spaces, people are working out of their basements. And if you just play it forward, I don't see this time when someone's going to say, well, hey, we're up to 50 people now. Let's pick a place to open an office, right? And so we're in a transition period. We're in this position where, yes, a lot of large businesses are not really in the position to move full-time remote. A lot of companies, a lot of organizations, let's say your local municipal government, your town hall, there are people there who don't need to be at the town hall working on a daily basis. so they can work hybrid, but it's municipal. They're probably going to draw people to those jobs that are living there. So there's a variety of businesses, but for businesses like yourself that is fully remote, fully digital, and so much of the businesses that are happening these days are a lot of software development, a lot of data management, a lot of enterprise work that there's no physical product anymore and it doesn't need to be built in person.
Yeah. There are so many good examples too, even in government. And again, not to go on a political rampage here, but there are some examples in government where it worked during the pandemic. Everyone worked remotely during the pandemic. What's the push to come back to the office? Is it because we still have brick and mortar? And oh my goodness, if people aren't in those buildings, then we're basically paying for empty buildings. Is that one of the challenges too that some companies or even governments are struggling with?
Is one of the aspects of it. We certainly do see cities struggling with their downtown core. There's a story recently about Seattle that has not recovered since the pandemic, where it used to be pretty vibrant downtown. People would come to the office, the tall buildings, and over lunch, all the restaurants and pubs down there would be flush with customers, and that just hasn't recovered because people are staying home. And even though the companies may be holding on to those office buildings to do hybrid work, we're seeing a fraction of the people actually making the trip down to work. But there's other reasons as well. The ability to run the company is important, and leaders and HR and managers, they need to think a little bit differently. And so again, from a management standpoint, it just isn't feasible to provide training and move that behemoth into a new way of thinking across a large 10,000 person company that may have multiple layers of middle management. And even then, we've seen, drawing an example from my experience, the rollout of agile in some of these businesses has been very textbook, and they miss the point that, some of the flexibility and the concepts around agile, they just deliver various levels, the green belt, the red belt, and black belt of agile. And then companies come in, they apply that to a business, they leave, and the business just doesn't know what to do with it anymore. Moving people, change management is a real tough thing. And be forced to do it over the pandemic, and we have to see the results of it. And some companies stood back afterwards and said, "Yep, this is for us. This is working." And there's a number of those in my town. There's a number all across the North America. And as I mentioned earlier, we're going to see more companies join that crowd, I believe, as they progress here.
There's certainly been an evolution, and we can certainly see the pandemic probably moved the pendulum a little bit more in that direction, or certainly pushed us a little further there. You've written a book about this called The Power of Remote.
I've got right here. There's my prop.
There's the book.
Yeah.
You cover some key points here that help organizations implement and thrive in the modern workplace. What are some of these key messages that you want to share with people?
So from my perspective, there's a few important foundational aspects to running a business. The first is being intentional. What you hear quite a bit with an in-office business is that things happen organically. And if you really start to look at the word organically in this context, it really means by luck. You're not going to have any plans in place, but someone's fortunately going to meet a proverbial water cooler and come up with a great plan and go implement it. With remote work, you just don't have that. So you have to be more intentional with everything you do. And it's not necessarily about process. It's more about habits and culture, establishing the right ways of communicating, hiring the right people. So for example, not everyone's cut out for remote work. And that's the other thing people have found as well, that, hey, you do like to go in the office occasionally and see people, and that maybe remote work isn't for you. Setting up intentional systems and processes and habits is very important. And having those conversations with the people on your team, like, how does innovation happen? Right? What are we doing to encourage innovation? And interesting thing for me is that this actually becomes a bit of a superpower, because you can have those conversations in the office as well. Hey, how does innovation happen here? And those businesses that do that tend to succeed and thrive. Whereas the businesses that just focus on the day-to-day and look at, their next product launch, and they don't consider, all the aspects of running a business, learning and development, training, mentorship, innovation, project management, All these things need to have a have intentional approach to them in order for you to be successful.
Do you think that with this evolution of understanding that there are some people who love to work remotely, can do it independently, they're already doing that anyways, even if they're in an office, and there are people who need to physically go into the office space to feel productive? Can you sense or can you predict that in future, maybe even the near future, we'll see more hybrid models of work?
I think we're already there. I think the majority of the companies that I talk to are already allowing either they have a prescribed strategy where there's 2 or 3 days a week you have to be at the office, or they have some sort of flexible understanding that if you want to work a day a month at home, that's fine. What I worry is that people see these as alternatives to sick days or vacations. That hey, you can go work from home if you're not feeling well, but it's not really a sick day; it's a paid day. You're expected to do your work. That's concerning. I think this is one of those areas where maybe down the road we might see some government regulation around what it means to work from home and how that's treated. But generally, most businesses these days have a greater flexibility for where you work, and that gives people more options. I'm truly interested in is what this next generation is going to want to do. So we look at this as a where do I want to work? And yes, there's a good percentage of if you look at the numbers right now, majority of the people who are comfortable working from home are actually older than you'd expect. The older cohort, they've gone to the office, they've made their had their chance to have build relationships. A lot of them are just tired of it. They don't want to go back to the office, and they're happy just to get their work done and starting to live life. They're seeing their kids get older. They're seeing their days maybe get numbered, and they want to put more emphasis on the life that they're living. However, the younger group coming up, the proverbial Gen Z or Gen Z, they are a lot more finely tuned with technology. And all you have to do is go to a school. And I got a daughter who's in grade 10, and they will text to each other while they're standing in front of each other. They are far more comfortable dealing with technology than other people. And I think we're going to see that the concept of remote work is going to really appeal to them. But there's going to have to be some challenges there because, my personal feeling is that anyone who's coming out of school should spend the next 5 years working in an office. There's lessons you learn there about the culture of working that are hard to learn when you're sitting in a house in your basement by yourself at the end of a computer. And that is dominantly because there's no concerted effort to train people on how to work remotely or how to even be good workers at schools. And it's going to take a long time for that to catch up.
I was just going to say, is there an education piece here where colleges, universities, higher learning institutions that they're going to see, and not that we want to see them, boarded up or anything, but are we going to see even more remote learning or learning about remote working that, let's face it, when you and I went to school, there wasn't really a course on here's how you work remotely. Do you see that that's potentially going to open things up a little bit?
I'd like to think it would, but back to your point, I didn't get a course on how to do time management either. I didn't get a course on how to be a manager. I didn't really get a course on how to manage my money, back in the day. And those courses are starting to trickle in, but they're being offered as optional courses and electives next to foods. What's someone going to choose, right? I think that there's been lots of calls over the years for people to put more emphasis on the life skills that you need to use to be a good employee, to be a good budgeter, to run your household. And we just haven't seen those materialize in a meaningful way. My expectation is that school, the way it is now, will probably remain the way it is for quite some time. We may see more people doing more remote learning as it does support the learning from home option that's popular among some groups.
What's interesting is in the business world, certainly the world that I work in, and we work with a number of coaches and consultants and other subject matter experts, and they're seeing a shift in even the work that they do. So folks who would think nothing of running an 8-week or a 12-week program, hey, let's meet every Wednesday at 10 a.m. That's when the course is being held. A lot of those are not remote, but remote in the sense that it's going evergreen. You know what? You sign up for the program, here it is. It's a learn at your own pace. And then we meet once a week. If you have questions, your questions are answered that once a week, or that's twice a month or whatever it is, versus the sitting in the classroom, sitting in the office. So it seems like in business, depending on the business, of course, it's shifting that way. The education piece, not to wave a flag or anything, but education needs to get caught up with where the world is going.
So much can be done from a computer from anywhere in the world, and you have all your equipment it's been shrunk down over the last while to fit in a room in your house or put in a bag, and that gives you more options. And so what we're seeing is this flexibility is driving innovation in some respects. So people are seeing this opportunity I don't have to be stuck in this physical location to do my job or run a business. What options does that give me? We're going to see some great innovation from that over the next little while. I'm also very interested in seeing what happens with real estate in a sense, where our new houses going to be built with remote work in mind, right? Used to be the den, but now the den is really the office, and it's going to be more of a necessity. And what if you have two people working remotely from home? Well, do you need two dens? Is that now becoming or maybe a third bedroom? But is this now going to start driving how people purchase homes or what they look for in a home or a dwelling?
Wow. Things that you don't even think about. You'd think that 3-bedroom homes are the norm right now. Maybe we now need a 4th bedroom because 2 of those bedrooms, or the bedroom and maybe a room in the basement, are going to be dedicated to, as you said, not just the den, but an office, where before it wasn't necessarily a dedicated office. Wow, Shane, so much great insights today. I want to give you the opportunity to pump the tires on the book, though. We've already talked about some of the aspects of the book, but for individuals who are looking for their copy, where can they find it? Give us a little bit more info about it.
Sure, yeah. This was published February 2023, probably the worst time book in history. It came out around the same time as the return to office mandates, but fortunately, it's since the hybrid work and remote work has become far more, people realize the benefits of it. It's become a bit more popular. I work with Cynthia Watson on this. It's chock full of techniques and strategies to work remotely. It's predominantly focused towards the business owners who want to run a business remotely, and those 3 key categories: leadership, management, and HR. We do have some aspects in the back of the book for project management and sales as well, 2 other groups that are seeing lots of work remotely. It's available on Amazon, published through Forbes, and we've received, I'm a pretty humble person, but we've received a lot of really good praise about it. I'm pretty happy with how well it's been received, and I would love to hear from anybody who either purchases the book or wants to learn more.
And we'll make sure we put the link to the book in the show notes, as well as your social links as well. Shane, it's been an amazing conversation. I'm excited for where work is going, although I'm already working remotely. So
yes,
maybe there's a remote work. I don't know.
It's doing what you're doing from a beach.
Oh, I like that. I like the way you think, my friend, and not a Canadian beach in January. No,
that's right. Yeah.
Not quite the same experience. Shane Spragg, before I let you go, I'll give you the final thought.
Yeah, I think we've had a lot of good conversation today. The key one for me is looking at is where it's going in the future. And employers take note that people are asking for remote work. People like the flexibility. People recognize the well-being that it brings, and just the simple ability of being able to pick your kids up at 3:00 in the afternoon when they come home from school is a game changer for many adults. It's a perk that you can offer for low cost. In fact, it saves you money in the long run if you decide to close an office or 2. Plus, done right, it has been proven to be more productive, and it sort of supports your bottom line as well. So business owners, take note. It's time to consider moving remote if you haven't.
All right, that's a great place to leave it. Shane Spraggs, thank you so much for being my guest today.
Thank you, Carl. Pleasure to be here.
And hey, thank you for being a part of the show today. So glad you could join us. Believe it or not, I can't work this magic by myself. So thanks to my amazing team, our audio engineer, Dom Carrillo, our sonic branding genius, Kenton Dilborowski, and the person who works the arms, all of our arms actually, our project manager and my trusty assistant, Jillavel Tiongo, known to us here simply as July. If you like what you heard today, let us know. You can leave us a comment or review, or even send us a voice note. And if you really liked it, we hope you'll share it with your friends and your colleagues. If you don't like what you heard today, well, please feel free to share it with your enemies. And if you know of someone who would make a great guest on the show, let us know about it. You can get in touch with us by going to our show notes, where all of our connection points are there, including the links to our website, LinkedIn, and Facebook as well. And if you're ready to be a guest on podcasts, or even start your own show, Let's have a conversation. We'll show you the simplest way to get into the podcasting space and rock it. Because, after all, we're Podcast Solutions Made Simple. Catch you again next time.